Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 939, Sunday, October the 27th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, well don't forget to get your votes in today for Dumbass of the Week. Be sure and get your comments on in the comments section of this video and try to get those in by 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on this video. Thanks so much for tuning in again. Let's go ahead and get to the news of the day. Okay, so we had about a 24-hour period of time, day before yesterday, we had a 24-hour period of time in which we had three significant things drop. The first was, of course, the letter from Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz to the heads of the Senate Intel and Oversight Committees, letting them know where the report was and what process and when they could likely expect it to be released. Then, of course, we had we learned, I should say, that the Barr Durham review has now shifted into another phase and into a criminal investigation. And then, of course, we had the drop of Sidney Powell putting this motion that she filed with the court on the web so that you could read it. And of course, we saw a lot of excerpts or heard a lot of pundits commenting on excerpts from that and all the things that we learned. So I want to talk about that for a few minutes. And the first thing I want to mention is that some of you may have seen John Ratcliffe on Fox News discussing basically this topic, that these things were connected. And so, yes, they were connected. These were not accidental. These things were all connected. So let's kind of go through how and why that is. Okay, so Ratcliffe is on Fox and he's saying, okay, he said, so what you had going on here was that there is a sort of a long-standing rule or policy within the DOJ that when there is a Inspector General investigation going on, if there is a parallel investigation that's going to be going on by the Department of Justice, they will stand down and allow the Inspector General to first complete his work, and then once his work is complete, then the Department of Justice can go official with their investigation in this, what he describes as a parallel investigation. Two investigations that are basically looking at the same or very similar things that are going on at the same time. So this is a long-standing rule and policy, and Ratcliffe says it's very likely that, you know, Durham was appointed back in May to specifically look into the origins of the Russiagate hoax, and it's very likely that he has been ready for several months to move into a criminal investigation, but he's had to stand down, in a sense, to allow the Inspector General to finish his work. And there's obviously, it's a policy reason is why it happened this way, but there's a couple other things to keep in mind, sort of tactical reason or strategic reason why Barr and Durham would not want to go public with the fact that they have a criminal investigation at the previous point. And that is, first of all, because you want these witnesses who the Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz is interviewing, you want them to be able to give their testimony to Horowitz without feeling any undue pressure about the fact that there's a parallel investigation going on in the shadows somewhere that they don't know about, because it would certainly affect what they would say to the Inspector General. So they wanted to lay really low, sort of in the weeds, just sort of in the background as some sort of a criminal review, not really something people were thinking too much about, because they were focused on the IG inquiry into what was going on. So it allows them to speak more freely. It also allows them to go on the record. And so Horowitz and Barr do not want to do anything that would change the way that these people would relate to the Inspector General. If they know there's a criminal, see, the Inspector General is likely, when you're interviewed by the Inspector General or when the Inspector General does an investigation, it rarely ends up leading to criminal charges, people going to jail and things and such. It generally leads to the Inspector General making recommendations for things that they can do to fix maybe some problems that he points out. But when you have a prosecutor asking you questions, he's only got one thing on his mind. He's a prosecutor. He's looking for scalps. So you don't want that pressure. You want those people speaking freely to the Inspector General because they might say more. They're more at ease to talk. They may say things that they would normally, that if it was a prosecutor or someone really that they thought could go after them, they're going to be safeguarding what they say a lot more, thinking about what they say a lot more. So you want to lay low in the weeds, which is what Barr and Durham did. They laid low in the weeds and allowed these people to speak freely to the Inspector General. Okay, so then once the Inspector General comes out, so if you remember what happened, once Barr made it clear that Durham had been brought in and was going to do this review of the origins, and then we get a little bit farther down, and a couple months later, Barr comes out, and we find out, not so much from Barr, but we find out through media reports that Durham has asked for more resources and this and that and the other thing. They expand his office space, they give him more prosecutors and more investigators and the whole 9 yards. If you remember, right after that happened and that became publicly known, a lot of people started coming back to Horowitz who had testified to him previously. They came back to him because they wanted to modify their testimony. This, of course, led to a delay in the IG report being released because these people wanted to come back and modify their statements. So that is something to keep in mind, and that is why Barr and Durham have had to wait so long before they could move into an official criminal investigation, because they had to stand down and allow Horowitz to complete his part. And that, one reason, because it's policy. Number two, because they want these witnesses on record with the Inspector General, because once they're on record with Horowitz, that's under oath testimony. So once they've got under oath testimony from all these people from Horowitz, they've kind of got them locked in. They really can't wiggle around much. They don't have much wiggle room. Because they've already gone on the record. So that's another reason. It's a tactical reason why Barr and Durham laid low and didn't move forward. And then we get the third part of this, which is the fact that Barr didn't come forward like I thought he may, although I thought it would come after the Inspector General report is released. Now, I still believe that after the Inspector General report is released, I would not doubt, but that within a week or two of that, Barr actually comes out and has some kind of a press conference and discusses, why what we learned from the Horowitz report justifies the criminal investigation that he's now conducting, and he may give us some more information on that. But the thing is, there's another thing about this, is that Barr and Durham have been prosecuting people for a very long time, and they know how things work. And so once you come out and you announce that you are now in a criminal investigation and people understand what it is that you're investigating, anyone who may be involved or may get caught up in that is immediately going to become very concerned. And one of the first things they're going to do is consult an attorney and say, hey, there's this investigation. It's now a criminal investigation. I have reason to believe that I might come up in this investigation, and I'm a little concerned about what to do. Now, the very first thing this attorney is going to do is going to say, okay, well, do you think you have some criminal liability here, or is there something like that? And they're going to have this conversation, and the attorney's likely going to say, I think the best thing to do is, if you have some information and you also feel you might be, in some sort of, danger of being charged with some sort of a crime, the best thing we could do is come out with it right now, go to the Attorney General or whoever's doing the prosecuting, go to the prosecutor and see if they would be willing to exchange immunity. Get an immunity agreement, which means they're going to give you immunity to tell what you know, even if it may involve you admitting to a crime you may have been involved in, but in exchange for that, they're not going to prosecute you. What they're going to ask for in return is that you give them everything that you know, which might incriminate them. Now, most people understand that this is typically what's known as, hey, you give me information, you got to give me a bigger fish. Okay, so it would do no good to go to the prosecutor unless you can actually give him something that he doesn't already have, or give him a bigger fish. He's not going to let you off the hook to get someone below you. He's only letting you off the hook if you can take down someone above you. And of course, you generally have to be able to prove that through some sort of evidence or first-hand testimony, whatever. So this is typically what's going on. So it's very important to realize that Barr didn't come out and make a public announcement, nor did Durham, the fact that they had moved into a criminal investigation. They had to wait for Horowitz to basically get to the point where all the witnesses that are going to be interviewed have been interviewed. They've come back, they've recanted their testimony, they're now locked in. And it's at that point that Barr and Durham came out and said, okay, but they didn't come out and make a public statement. It sort of was leaked, you might say. And so that was on purpose, because at this point we can see Durham doesn't leak anything, nor does Barr. They've run a very, very tight investigation up to this point. So obviously that was intentional. And that's the reason that they did it. They did it because they wanted to put the perps on notice that this is a criminal investigation, and we're now looking at all of you who may have been involved, knowing good and well that that's going to trigger a bunch of these people to get very nervous and to go get attorneys. And they know what the attorneys, because they're both attorneys, are going to advise. And they're going to advise, hey, why don't we see if we can get an immunity deal? Why don't we see if we can get something where we can take you completely out of the possibility of being charged with any crimes? Of course, you're going to have to give up information to do that. So this is why Barr and Durham wanted to get this out. They didn't come out and make a public statement, not yet. I expect after the IG report comes out, we probably will get some sort of a press conference from Barr. Maybe, maybe not. But the most important thing was that they come out and let it be known without actually doing it publicly. Somehow it was leaked, let's say, because it just was reported by the New York Times that it was now a criminal investigation. And they wanted that out there. If they didn't want that out there, it wouldn't be out there, or they would have come out and knocked it down. They did not come out and knock it down. Therefore, it is true. And exactly what we believe will happen when you come out and do that appears to have happened, because right after that, within 24 hours, we get a story that former General Counsel Baker is now cooperating with the investigation, and then we see that McCabe drops his lawsuit against the DOJ, and there's another report that he himself is exactly doing what I just said, is he's seeking a possible immunity deal. Now, the problem that McCabe has is he's waited so long that by now, probably, there's very little that McCabe can offer Durham and Barr that they don't already know. You have to give them something they don't have. You have to give up someone above you. Who's above McCabe? Not that many people. His boss, Comey. He could give up probably Priestap. He could probably give up Yates. And maybe Obama, but I doubt if he's got anything on Obama, but, we don't know that. So there's very few people above McCabe that he could give up, and I don't know that he's got any information that Barr and Durham don't already have. So if you have to, in order to get an immunity deal, you got to give the prosecutor something really good, especially if you're as deeply involved in the crime as McCabe was. He's not like a outside edge tier player, sitting back that just had a little bit to do with it. He was in the heart of he was one of the brain trust of the entire multiple operations, from the Hillary Clinton rigging the email investigation, to running the counterintelligence operation, to setting up the spies, to the cover-ups, to the Flynn thing. He was involved in everything. He is a major, major criminal in this deal, and so to give him immunity, he would have to give up everything. I mean, he would have to be able to give the entire plot. He would have to be able to present enough evidence, because remember, he's not a great witness. If you're going to put him up on the stand as a witness, McCabe is not a strong witness. He's already lied to the FBI 3 times. He's already said that he would get back at anyone if they tried to take him down or scapegoat him. He is not a solid witness, and he's not a witness that's really wanting to come forward. He's a witness that would be coming forward because his ass is on the line. He's not the type of witness that you really want to put up in front of a grand jury or in front of a jury in any regard, because he can be picked apart too easily. And the other players around him could circle the wagons and fence him out and really sort of destroy his credibility. So I think McCabe's chances of getting an immunity deal are very thin, honestly, unless he can unless he can give up Obama. If he can't give up Obama, and he's got to have proof, he's got to have documents, he's got to have something, really solid before you could offer him immunity. But that's exactly what's being reported that he's going for. So it's no coincidence that these three things happened. Now, the third thing that happened, of course, is the Sidney Powell drop. Now, Sidney Powell gets some brand new information that a lot of members of Congress have been trying to get, that a lot of us have been asking questions about. There have been subpoenas. Rodenstein was subpoenaed on this stuff. The FBI has been subpoenaed on this stuff. They have not been willing to give up any of this kind of information. Yet someone who Sidney Powell describes as a very trusted source high up in the DOJ gave her the following information. And let's just go through a few of them. There's a lot more than I can go through in this video, but the most important ones being that Mr. Durham has two of Mifsud's phones, or two phones that were issued to Mifsud. Okay, that is major information drop. Someone wanted Sidney Powell to have that information. Otherwise, she wouldn't have it. Okay, we find out that she's given information that Lisa Page edited and even manufactured statements in the Flynn interview with the Flynn 302, did the editing on that and lied about it. We find out that McCabe himself, what's the word that she used, sort of rewrote, Peter's been stroking us, rewrote his notes from the 302, which is what was used to give to Sally Yates so that she could go to White House Chief Counsel and pressure them to fire Flynn. She suggests that General Counsel Baker is the one who gave the Kislyak, or gave the information, what was the information from the call between Kislyak and Flynn, that Baker is the one that gave that to David Ignatius, the fake news reporter, and that Clapper was likely the person who provided that information to Baker, who then gave it to Ignatius regarding the Flynn-Kislyak phone call. And there's more. But basically, what does this tell us? Well, you could speculate on a couple things. Obviously, it's a white hat of someone. And I would think for this type of information to come out, it had to be someone around Barr and Durham, because they're running a fairly tight investigation. Someone around Barr and Durham wanted Sidney Powell to have this information. Why is that? She's defending Michael Flynn. So I think you can logically conclude from this that someone at the DOJ within the Durham-Barr investigation is looking at the Flynn case. They've seen information they've got that they know exonerates Flynn. And here's Powell fighting for Flynn's life, basically, in court. And they can see that she's trying to get information that the DOJ is not coming off of. But Durham and Barr have it. Someone within their investigative team has it. And they know that they've got what Sidney Powell needs to get Flynn exonerated, and he should be, because he was an innocent man who was framed. And it's likely Barr and Durham are aware of this, and they're watching this go on and go, man, we can't let this go on. Flynn should be a free man. He's gone through enough, and we have the evidence. But this is the sentencing hearing, and Powell is desperately trying in the later stages of the game to try to get this thing corrected, but the DOJ is blocking her. So, we got to offer a little help. So I believe that someone within the Barr-Durham team, it had to be, to have this type of information. Someone within the Barr-Durham team, and probably they did not do it without the blessing of Barr and or Durham. So I think that this came directly from Barr and Durham, this leak to Sidney Powell. Probably not them personally, but they directed someone else to get this information to Sidney Powell because they know that Flynn is being railroaded and being wronged, and they want to write this thing and get it over with. And pretty much what they gave to Sidney Powell is enough that if the judge is even remotely honest and he looks at what's there, it's going to be obvious that Flynn was set up and that the case against him should be dismissed. And so all three of these things happen within about a 24-hour period of time, and what that tells us is this obviously demonstrates a major shift in the direction that this thing has been going over the past almost 3 years. So we've now moved into a totally different game here. Instead of being totally on the defense, now we have gone on offense, and we've now put the other team on defense. And once the Horowitz report comes out, it's going to identify, so again, Horowitz is not going to connect dots and point out the conspiracy, the crime conspiracy, or any of that. He's going to point out things that happened that shouldn't have happened, and he's going to refer this to whoever, the various departments, to make corrections or maybe even criminal referrals or whatever. The thing to keep your eye on is Barr and Durham. But still, we are going to learn from Horowitz because he can't really cover it up because Barr is the ultimate authority, so Barr is not going to let Horowitz write a cover-up report. He's going to have to at least point out things that were done that shouldn't have been done or what have you. As far as assigning motive to it and everything else, that's up to Barr and Durham, not to Horowitz to decide. So these things are all perfectly coordinated together. They didn't, it wasn't an accident that all three of these events happened within 24 hours of one another. They were absolutely connected, and there's a reason for all of it, as I have just explained. And so I think that what we should keep in mind now is that at the same time we have this so-called impeachment inquiry going on. It's losing steam. They're doing the very best they can, but I think it's important to remember that once the Horowitz report comes out, there will be a great deal of focus now that the corrupt media is going to try not to cover it. They're going to try to avoid talking about it. They're going to try to spin it. They're going to try to do everything they can. But it's going to be hard to do because it's going to be such a major story. Lying to the FISA court, misrepresenting the evidence, spying on the Trump campaign. There's going to be a lot of heat and a lot of smoke around that, and they're going to be spending most of their time going on defense, which means they won't have all that time that they now devote to so-called impeachment. They're going to be devoting to trying to cover their asses and cover the asses of the Democrats, the deep state, and the Obama administration. And then, of course, once the Durham-Barr situation begins to take hold and they begin to charge people, which I do believe they will, 90% sure there will be criminal charges filed against probably dozens of people. At that point, you can forget impeachment. That thing will be completely blown out of the water. No one will even care. This story is so big that it will destroy everything else in its wake, and it will be the only thing people will be talking about is how the so-called conspiracy theory that Trump's been talking about for 2.5, 3 years actually turned out to be true, that they did spy on the Trump campaign within the Obama administration, and the only question is who was behind it, who was involved in it, who participated in it, and now what's going to happen as a result of that. So that's, I think, what we're looking at as we go forward. Let's cover some other news now. Quid pro quo Joe has been caught in another lie. Quid pro quo Joe told Fox News' Peter Doocy that he never discussed Ukraine with his son Hunter. He also told an NPR reporter that he never discussed with his son or his brother or anyone else anything having to do with their business, period. Unfortunately, for Quid pro quo Joe, the Washington Examiner has just written a story where it shows that Joe Biden, Quid pro quo Joe, privately contacted the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice while he was a senator to discuss issues about his son Hunter Biden's firm, which is a lobbying firm. So he's caught in another lie. There you go. Biden, again, as we've reported a couple times now, is hurting for cash. Hurting for cash, and that's not an accident. Someone turned off the spigot. I'll give you one guess. I'll give you three guesses. Who do you think turned off the spigot? The cash flow to quid pro quo Joe. So now, as a result of that, he can't raise any money. He's now dropped his opposition to taking money from super PACs. Quid pro quo Joe will now take money from super PACs or anyone else. You know, he's a very stupid man, because if he was halfway smart, he would realize that he shouldn't have a money problem at all. He's got one of the best money raisers money can buy. His son, Hunter Biden, he seems to be able to come up with millions and millions of dollars from the Chinese, the Ukrainians, and everyone else. If quid pro quo Joe was smart, he would make his son Hunter his campaign finance manager. Maybe he could raise some cash. Did you guys see the video of Twitch McConnell being snubbed by that pole bearer at Elijah Cummings' funeral? I don't know who's the bigger dumbass, McConnell for showing up or the pole bearer for snubbing a U.S. senator, the Senate Majority Leader. And the funny thing is, if you watch the video, the guy's going down the line shaking hands with all these Democrats. He gets to Schumer, shakes hands with Chuck the Cuck. McConnell is right next to him, and then McConnell kind of goes to hold out his hand, and the dude just literally just blows him off totally, walks right past him, and goes to the next guy and shakes his hand. At which point McConnell turns and looks over at Schumer, and Schumer looks at McConnell like, you know, it's just a look on Chuck the Cuck's face is classic. It's actually better than the look on McConnell's face. Check out the little video clip if you haven't seen it. Here's a question for you. Will Mr. Durham consider criminal charges against media corporations and reporters in the context of his investigation? Will Mr. Durham consider criminal charges against media corporations and reporters? Keep in mind, they weren't just willing conduits in the plot. They knowingly collaborated in the crime. That makes them accessories to the crime. And in some cases, they were the instigators of the plot. And most importantly, they were the most important group of players in covering up the plot. And remember, it's the cover-up that usually gets you. This would include the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, BuzzFeed, CNN, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, and others. All of these people, reporters from all of these news organizations, and some, the heads of the organizations themselves, as in the case of CNN, are complicit as accessories in the crime and are key players, if not the key players, in the cover-up. That is why the media is hell-bent on attacking Barr, Durham, Trump, and anyone pursuing the investigation. That's why they've been trying to avoid it for so long. But as I've told you now several times, they're going to fail because they can throw all the propaganda that they want. All that matters once you get into the court of law is facts and evidence. The bullshit doesn't matter. It may matter in the media world day by day as they're doing their propaganda, but once you get in court, none of that stuff they're saying on MSNBC or the New York Times matters. All that matters in the courtroom is the facts, the witnesses, and the evidence. And that's why they're going to lose this fight and lose bad. The only question is, are they going to survive? Now, you know, they may survive and not be charged with crimes, although I think they should be. But I'm going to tell you, the reputations of all these media organizations are completely done. They are going to be destroyed. Reporters' careers destroyed, and they should be. These people should never be reporting again. They all need to find a new line of work. Media organizations are going to have a very, very difficult time after Barr and Durham expose the truth. They surely are. Comey says if Trump wins, he's going to move in 2020, that he's going to move to New Zealand. Well, they don't want James Comey in New Zealand. I promise you, they do not want James Comey in New Zealand. But I don't think that he has to worry about that, because I believe that by 2020, Comey is likely going to be in an orange jumpsuit. He's so arrogant, he can't even see it coming. Of course, we heard yesterday that Maria Butina is out of jail. She's now arrived back in Moscow, and she was greeted as a hero in Moscow. She was set up too, by the way. We've just gotten some new information just in the past couple of hours. Lee Smith, many of you familiar with Lee Smith, great reporter, done a great job on the Spygate story. He's quoted in my timeline many times. We've talked about him here on TowerGate many times. Lee Smith has a new book coming out on October the 29th, just about 2-3 days from now. His book is basically titled How Devin Nunes Uncovered the Biggest Political Scandal in U.S. History. What's different about his book from Jarrett's book, from Bongino's book, and from other books that are out there, Lee Smith has really sniffed out the Clinton connection. He really focuses a lot, Lee Smith does, in his book, about the real origins of the dossier, Christopher Steele, and the people around Clinton. And he really shines a light on Clinton's role, which, as you know, here on TowerGate, I do this more than anybody. I don't know anybody else. Everyone else wants to look at Comey and Brennan and Clapper and all these people, but as most of you know, I've been saying for a very long time, the Rotten Reverend Clinton is the mastermind of this plot. She planned, organized, directed, and is controlling the original plot, which morphed into the impeachment. She's behind a lot of that. She's behind a lot of the attacks on, like, Tulsi Gabbard. She's behind the freezing up of the money on Biden, and she'll be behind the takedown of Pocahontas when the time comes. So once the Clinton people in Clinton world found out about Lee Smith's book, which someone obviously leaked excerpts of it to them as it was going through the publishing process, and so he started getting legal threats from Sidney Blumenthal, Hillary Clinton's #1 henchman. So Sidney Blumenthal began making legal threats against Lee Smith and the publisher of the book, which is called Center Street. They have reviewed everything in the book. All the footnotes are there. Lee Smith is a hardcore, serious journalist. He doesn't write, fantasy. Everything that's in his book will be backed with facts and evidence and footnotes. They've gone through and made sure that they've made no errors, because Sidney Blumenthal has made it perfectly clear that Clinton and people in Clinton world who are going to be negatively affected by this book are certainly going to be having their lawyers look at it to see if there's anything that could result in a lawsuit, any accusations made that can't be backed up. So Lee Smith says that both he and his publisher, Center Street, have also been contacted. They are 100% comfortable with everything in the book, that it is factual, can be proven, and they are going to publish the book on the 29th, and they are basically ignoring the threats being made, the legal threats being made by Blumenthal, coming from people in the Clinton world. One other thing before we go. Brennan, Clapper, and Comey have a very, very big problem. All of these people have demonstrated publicly how much they hate Trump over and over again, their hatred toward Trump. All three of these people had motive, means, and opportunity. Those are the things Durham will be looking at to indict people and charge them with crimes. All of these people have testified to Congress under oath. All have lied. And Durham has the video. So as they're going through all this, and they're sitting in front of a grand jury, and they're pointing out all the things that were done, these three are not going to be able to say, well, we were just conducting our investigation. That's what we normally do. There was no bias. They are not going to be able to fall back on the fact that there was no bias on their part, because they've been running their big mouths for years now, letting everyone know how much they hate Trump. That's going to be their downfall. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back with more TowerGate tomorrow. You guys have a good night. Don't forget your Dumbass of the Week.